Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. My guest today is Chris Huriwai. He is the co-producer of a brand new documentary, the one that the dairy industry does not want you to see. It is called Milk. You'll have an opportunity to learn where you can see it and how to support this film and learn a little bit more about it. Please welcome Chris to the show. I'm so excited to meet you because, it was because of another. This is what's so great about my show is I really didn't know about your film, and then I interviewed Dr. Luke Wilson, and he told me he was in this film, and I'm like, that's great because he's from New Zealand. And I looked into the film, and I go, I sure hope I can get somebody associated with the film on the show. So, Milked, great name by the way. What inspired you to do this film?
Oh, but first off, thank you so much for having me on here. Yeah, Luke, he's an amazing individual. We're so lucky to have him part of our project. And I'm just so happy to be here talking to you, AJ. I feel so humbled. I'm happy to be representing Milked. I send my regards from Amy Taylor, our director. Her internet quality is not as good as mine. So yeah, happy to be here. But thank you again. Thank you so much. So Milked, it's all about the dairy industry. To put it bluntly, it's essentially a Cowspiracy style documentary all about dairy. So for those who have seen Cowspiracy, they touch on the environmental impacts of primarily red meat. And so we delved into the details around the environmental degradation of the dairy industry, also effects of dairy on our health, and also a lot of the struggles that our farmers are going through as well, which is a side that particularly vegans, and I find environmental and animal rights activists, is something that they're a little bit disconnected from. We kind of tend to view the farmers as the enemies or the bad guys, but we thought it was important for us to really portray their side of the story here as well, and to get an understanding of the barriers and the issues that they are facing so that we can start to come up with some solutions together.
Yeah. Well, I've got so many questions because I saw the film. Thank you for letting me see it. It was fabulous. And we're going to tell the audience where they can see it. But have you had any experience before working on films or documentary? And why were you so passionate about this particular subject?
No, not me myself. Amy Taylor, the director, she's an award-winning filmmaker. And I'm so incredibly lucky that she reached out to me. I've been doing just social media activism, I would say. I've been being an advocate against the dairy industry for a couple of years now. And I'd worked with Amy on some smaller projects. And so, we worked well together. She reached out to me again saying that, a Cowspiracy version of the dairy industry needs to happen. And I agreed, absolutely. I had lots of background research about the dairy industry on hand. So I knew exactly the breadth and diversity of issues. And I knew that, a documentary needs to happen. The reason why we made it about dairy specifically, and for people that watch the film, and you'll know, we do broaden it out, branch it out into talking about more general veganism. But this story hadn't been told before by a mainstream documentary movie maker or any such. And so it was a gap that we knew we needed to fill. And because there is such a diversity, breadth of issues regarding dairy, we knew that it would be a project that a lot of different people could come together on. We were able to draw on experts from a real diversity of spaces, environment, health, also indigenous rights, government and media bias and corruption in these different health industries and such. And so because it's such a diversity of issues, we're able to grab onto lots of people to make this a really awesome collaborative project.
Well, you mentioned that it's like the Cowspiracy for dairy, but you worked with some of the people that did Cowspiracy.
Yeah, so lucky and crazy. Keegan Kuhn, amazing individual. He actually did all of the music for our film. He's done an original score for our film, and he's one of the executive producers. We're so lucky to have him on board. And yeah, he's just been an incredible individual. He's an amazing filmmaker and just a great all-around person. The amount of advice that he's given us during our creation of this film has been just invaluable. So big shout out to you, Keegan. Thank you so much.
And how did you get Susie Cameron Amos on board?
Yeah, well, Susie Susie, she lives here in Aotearoa in New Zealand. Her and her partner, James, they purchased a dairy farm when they first came to Aotearoa, New Zealand. And so, they had these kind of romantic ideas of an organic dairy farm, kind of, sustainably produced dairy. And as people will learn in the film, that wasn't as easy as they thought it was going to be. And I suppose along Susie and James's journey into the plant-based world, they started learning more about the inherent sustainability issues of the dairy industry. And so she hasn't gotten involved with a lot of other projects here in Aotearoa around veganism and plant-based living. But as momentum started picking up for our documentary, we were able to get it in front of Susie. She loved the project, and we were lucky enough to have her support and as well James's support. We've had some really great advice from both of them in terms of some of the direction of the film. And of course, they know this industry really well. And so it's been incredibly valuable to have them on board. And so we've got Susie signed on as an executive producer as well. So thank you so much, Susie. Love you. Thank you. Thank you.
That is amazing. And I have so many questions I want to ask you about the film, but I want the audience to know when can they see it? How can they see it? How can they support it? I know you have an Indiegogo, and I've linked to it in the show notes. So you have somebody that's matching it dollar for dollar, I believe.
Yeah. We've just had so much amazing help from so many incredible individuals. There is a crowdfund going on at the moment on Indiegogo. If anyone wants to support our project and help to spread the message out there, as well to pay the makers of the film, myself, Amy, a lot of our editors, and even Keegan and a few other people who haven't seen a cent for this film. We've given up traditional distribution in terms of licensing out the film. We've prioritized a free release to make this as globally available as possible. But as well, we've got an impact campaign to help spread the message of the film once it's released, which is going to be March the 19th. There's an amazing platform called Waterbear, which was created by the producer of My Octopus Teacher. A lot of people will know that film. And so for everyone wanting to watch the film, it's the 19th of March on Waterbear, the free platform. For those in New Zealand, though, that's the 19th. Sorry, the 19th of March in New Zealand. Everywhere else is the 18th of March. I have to get that one right, because here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we're like almost a full day ahead of most people. And we've been advertising the documentary going out on the 18th of March for everybody else. And then I've been like, oh my God, everyone here at home thinks it's on the 18th, but it's actually for us here in Aotearoa on the 19th. So I just got to get that one straight.
That is great. And I'll put a link to that. And also when we end today's interview, I'll even show what's called
the trailer.
The trailer.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I don't know much about your country, I'll be honest. And I learned that 95% of your country's dairy products are exported. So my first question is why and where?
Yeah. And also, just for everyone watching that trailer, a lot of people have been asking, is there much animal cruelty in the film itself? And I have to say,
there's no cruelty. I'm going to be honest, because I'm really sensitive. There are two visual scenes that are not pleasant to look at, but I wouldn't say you're seeing actual cruelty.
I mean, it's all cruelty.
Well, I mean, yes, of course it's cruel. I mean, the whole thing is
of course.
But it's not. I mean, listen, I'm very sensitive, and I was able to watch it.
You were able to watch it. Good.
There were two scenes. I'll just give you a hint. The word piles. Those were hard to watch. But it wasn't because I don't want the sensitive to be thinking it's horrific. It's not.
Yeah, I agree.
It's horrific. The industry is horrific, but your film is
absolutely not. Thank you. But yeah, for those watching the trailer, I would say the bulk of that kind of more graphic footage is actually in the trailer. It's quite a hard-hitting trailer, and I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't think I can watch it. I'm really worried." And I understand that. And for me and Amy, we tried to make it as watchable as possible for vegans, because we were being very sensitive to the fact that it can be very triggering. You want to support a vegan film, you want to watch a vegan film, but there's all this difficult stuff in there to watch. But really, the film is as palatable as possible. That was the focus for us. So yeah, here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, we export around about 95%. The figures change. It's very high in the high 90s, and we're the world's largest exporter of dairy products. And so we're a very small country, a very, very small country, but we're the world's largest exporter of dairy products. And so I think we are the perfect people, the perfect country to be making this film. Our country is very dairy centric, in our the front pages of our newspapers and news bulletins. It's very common to see dairy related stories, or for the whole 6 p.m. news to just be covered with dairy related stories. They're in our schools, they're in our health system. Many of our politicians are either dairy farmers or, have stock or some type of form of ownership in dairy farms or in the agricultural sector. We call animal agriculture the backbone of the New Zealand economy. And so, a very dairy centric country. A lot of people are getting quite sensitive to the fact that we've even made this film. To make this film is seen as an unpatriotic type thing to do. We're essentially attacking the identity of New Zealand. And for me, I'm quite happy to do that. For me, I'm Māori. I'm indigenous to Aotearoa. New Zealand was, the name that was given to this country after we were colonized. And really, the dairy industry has tried as hard as it possibly can to really embed itself into the identity of this country, as if to say that this country was made for dairy farming and that it was, the perfect place for dairy farming, which is a narrative that I'm really trying to push back against, because the embedded nature of that is really erasing our indigenous heritage, my heritage as a Māori. And so I'm more than happy to make what is being considered an unpatriotic film. Yeah.
Where are you exporting all these dairy products to? When you say dairy products, do you mean just milk, cheese, yogurt, ice cream? Where are these products going?
Yeah, we make all sorts. The primary product, though, is milk powder. And it's primarily going to, as you'd expect, more lactose intolerant demographics. China is one of the primary demographics. Indonesia.
That makes no sense, because Asians are lactose intolerant.
I know. I don't understand how we've been able to market these products to lactose intolerant nations. And I don't understand why the governments of these countries are importing these products for their people who have just, fluid lactose intolerance. In Asia, what are we looking at? Maybe like 90 to almost 100% for some Asian populations are lactose intolerant. And I know, for the rest of the world, it's around 60% or so. For myself, for Māori, we're sitting at around more 70% lactose intolerance. And so, we've made a name for ourselves, providing a product that a lot of the world, the majority of the world, cannot properly digest. And especially for myself, Māori, the native indigenous population of Aotearoa, we really can't handle this stuff either. It's just very, very backwards.
Yeah, the parts in the movie where you were showing those commercials with school children, that was just that was
cringe.
Disgusting.
It's cringe. Yeah. So we've got a program here. Well, it's actually since shut down, which is interesting. When I first started doing my advocacy around dairy, there was a program called Milk in Schools, and it was a free milk program that put free milk into all primary schools. Every primary school, unless, for whatever reason, the school decided to not participate, but pretty much all primary schools, they were giving away free milk to kids. That program has since ended, thank goodness, but they've now started a new program where they still provide the free milk, but it comes with a cereal breakfast kind of thing. So they've tied it in with some more healthy foods now. So it's a little bit more difficult to get in there to tell people to end this program, because they are providing some healthy food with the less healthy food. But what I'm going to be trying to do is to advocate that a plant-based milk alternative is provided with it, because at the moment it's just free milk without the plant-based alternative for people who are lactose intolerant or vegan, or for whatever reason don't want to consume that product.
Yeah. In some places, like, kids actually have to have a note to not have milk. Like, that's how bad it is. Like, it's just crazy. I'm not very good at geography, but I just Googled that New Zealand is 11,160 kilometers from China. So how far is that in miles? Because I don't know the metric.
I was homeschooled. And
but is it really far?
It's quite far. Yeah, yeah.
So that makes no sense. I mean, like,
Food miles. Yeah.
why send it to a country that far away? Can't they make their own damn dairy products? Not that they should do it either.
Well, I mean, so here in Aotearoa, we are famous for producing dairy products. The industry markets it as, the lowest carbon produced milk ever. And so one thing that we've been doing actually is live exporting dairy cattle for breeding in China. And this is a practice that we're trying to have cancelled. There's a 2-year phase out period at the moment. But yeah, China is starting up massive dairy farms themselves. At the moment, they're importing a huge amount of dairy products from us, but they are starting to make dairy farms themselves, which is a huge concern for the New Zealand economy, for the New Zealand dairy industry. We're exporters of these products, but countries are starting to make dairy farms themselves, which is a big concern for us here in Aotearoa. But it's not something that the industry here seem to be acknowledging. We're kind of just continuing as we are. We're not coming up with any contingency plans whatsoever. There's the precision fermentation technology coming through, lab-based milk, which also has a huge potential to really impact our farmers. And so this is something that we try to talk about more in the film, is the lack of foresight from this the industry leadership and as well government. There's no foresight. We're just trying as much as possible to milk this country, milk this industry dry for every last drop. And yeah, we're really hoping that we can get a spotlight on the fact that there is no leadership, there is no foresight, so that we can start coming up with some more sustainable career pathways for our farmers.
As an activist, I've heard of lab grown meat, so they're going to do the same with milk. And do you think, are you okay with that?
Well, it's obviously it's not what we should be getting into. We've got whole food plant-based foods. I mean, everyone should just be.
Well, no, I agree that it's terrible. But the way I look at it is there's going to be some people that are going to continue to want animal products. And that's cruelty. Because like, I think about it, like, okay, to give an example, I don't personally have a cat, but cats are obligate carnivores, and people that are vegans have cats and they don't like feeding them meat. But if they had lab grown meat, maybe. Do you understand where I'm going with this?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No. I'm kind of in two minds. I support it because I think in this reality, in this world that we exist in, there's only so much that we can do, which is realistic in terms of what we can switch, what we can transition into. And so I think it's a good stepping stone to, whatever is our higher conscious awakening. It's a great stepping stone. But I'm not the quickest to support it, because I think there are healthier alternatives which we should be striving for. But yes, capitalists, those who have the ability to transition the current market into something that is more efficient, they're going to do it. It's just a matter of time. And so I support it from the perspective that it is more environmentally friendly, and no animals will be harmed in the making, besides potentially animal testing and other various things that could go on, which we don't know about yet. But as a whole, I would say I support it, but I think we should be looking at the details.
But no, well, that's the other thing is like, I think a lot of people truly like looking at that commercial that was in your movie with the kids. I think a lot of people really don't know how deleterious dairy is.
Mm-hmm. Of course. Yeah. I mean, what are we talking about here? We're talking about how the industry tries to get it into people just to sell it as a product, or are we talking about the health implications here?
Well, the health implications, it's horrible. It's not, I mean,
right.
It's a bovine baby growth fluid that's meant for a baby calf, not to grow a human. I mean, no species drinks milk from another species, unless under maybe extraordinary circumstances, if a cat is orphaned. I mean, you hear about things like that, but nobody drinks milk after maturity except for people.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, it's in terms of saturated fat, dietary cholesterol. Saturated fat's the primary, food group that's bringing saturated fat into our system. And all of our health professionals here in Aotearoa, whether they're funded by dairy or not, everyone seems to agree on this one thing, that we need to be reducing the amount of saturated fat in our diet. But we're still happy to promote milk because it's that source of calcium. And one thing I'm trying to highlight is that the amount of calcium that we're being recommended to consume, it's already too high. It was set at too high of a level through poorly designed studies. It needs to come down, and we need to be talking about other sources of calcium, leafy greens, those other rich sources of calcium, which also hit those other beneficial nutrient markers that we're so desperately trying to fill. And yeah, I mean, cancer, everyone knows someone with cancer. The growth hormone, IGF-1, the acidic animal-based proteins in cow's milk, the fact that so many of us are lactose intolerant, the hormones, the estrogens, the different types of sex hormones, which can trigger, hormone sensitive cancers like breast and prostate. It's all in the cow's milk, the antibiotics that these animals are being fed, the trace chemicals that come back through the cow's milk, which are being passed on to us humans. I mean, the list is pretty endless in terms of the things in milk that we as human beings shouldn't be ingesting. But yeah, the propaganda from the industry, the reluctance of government to take this issue seriously is prevalent. And yeah, we need to stamp it out.
Thank you. I'm just curious, dairy is your main exported product. Do you have a main imported product in New Zealand?
Oh, that's a great question. No, I mean, well, we will have one, but I'm not sure what it is. But we are a very heavy export country. We have a very extractive economy. Our economy is essentially based off of extracting natural resources and sending it across the globe. Whether it's our water that we're cashing in on or our topsoil that we're cashing in on. Aotearoa is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful country. And when we were colonized, when the English came here, they saw it as a land of wealth that they wanted to exploit. And for the last 200 years since colonization, that's exactly what they've been doing.
You seem like a pretty young guy, and so I just want to thank you for your passion and caring and your activism. Have you always been an activist, and have you always followed a plant-based diet, and how did you even find out about one?
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I grew up myself on a lifestyle block. We tried to live off the land. We killed our own animals. I used to do a bit of hunting. So I'm making amends for it now. But no, I went vegetarian when I was about 13 years old. I was homeschooled, like I said, and so I didn't really have many friends, sadly. Poor me. But I had animals. I had animals to look after. I had chickens, of course, cats and dogs. We had 2 sheep, 2 cows, 2 pigs. Pretty much everything that you'd expect on a small lifestyle block. And when you're getting your social interaction from animals, you build those connections. And of course, like I said, we were killing our own animals for meat. When it came time to kill some of the animals, I just, after all those years of really bonding with these individuals, I made that connection and I decided to go vegetarian. And luckily, I had a very supportive mother, my father as well, but my mother particularly, as she was the one preparing most of the meals. She used to make a vegetarian meal for me on the side when everyone else was eating, just whatever. She took the time to do that for me, and she really made sure that I was going to the doctors and talking to them about nutrition. And so I learned about nutrition from quite a young age. It's quite easy to be vegetarian or vegan. But because I took this pathway from a young age, I learned about nutrition. And that's really stuck with me, the importance of nutrition and the fact that we need to educate as many people as possible. I went vegan when I started learning about the environmental impacts of animal agriculture. There's an incredible freshwater ecologist. His name's Mike Joy, who works at the University of, I've forgotten the university, but he's an incredible individual, freshwater ecologist. And I saw a paper of his which talked about the environmental degradation caused by intensive dairy farming. And so as a vegetarian, a cheese lover, I really started to look into that industry more after hearing about the environmental harm that it was causing. And because I went vegetarian for ethical reasons, once I started looking into the dairy industry more, obviously I learned about the separation of calves from their mothers. I learned about bobby calves, the the few days old or sometimes day old baby calves that are sent to the slaughterhouse because they're seen as a byproduct. You know, these cows have a 9-month pregnancy, just like us humans. They build those hormones, the connection with their young, then we separate them, and many of their young are sent to the slaughterhouse. And so as a ethical vegetarian, you know, I knew that I had to take that further step and become vegan.
That's amazing. Did any of your family members eventually join you or friends? And what is the vegan or plant-based scene like in New Zealand?
Well, my mum is a vegetarian. We've had lots of discussions about this, and I don't know if I'm able to pull her that extra little bit. I'm hoping that she sees Milked, the film, and maybe hopefully that'll influence her a little bit. She's quite a hardline, staunch lady. I think I get my outspoken nature from her, and so she probably, I don't know if she probably won't give into, you know, her youngest child making that kind of mental switch for her. We'll see. My brother, one of my brothers is a vegetarian. No, sorry, he's vegan. Team vegan. So I've had that kind of impact on 2 members of my immediate whānau family. Friends, many of my friends, you know, you post stuff on Facebook and you think you're not reaching anybody, but then a couple of years down the track, they send you that message. Oh, Chris, I saw that thing you posted. I'm so glad you did. So yeah, I've been able to impact some of my immediate friends and family, but I found it incredibly draining. You know, reaching out to your family is often harder than convincing strangers.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why I started getting into activism. And because I found it easier to speak with strangers rather than your immediate friends and family. And it's incredibly draining. And so for an activist and for other activists, I really do recommend that you kind of work on your empathy for your friends and family, because you're going to burn yourself out if you're just trying again and again, banging your head against the wall with your friends and family. That's why it's great to get out into the public and do activism and do advocacy outreach events, because there are so many people out there that are just dying for this message. They're just dying for this information, and you will come across them. Just, you know, plug away at it, and then you'll start having conversations with other people out there who are looking for this information, and it just feels so amazing once you break through some of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I was a young whippersnapper like you 40 years ago, I was doing a lot of activism. Now, this show is my activism, because what I want to do is
great activism.
Yeah, I want to get people to know about this film and tell other people about this film and watch this film. And I learned so much. Like, for example, each cow has the footprint of 14 people. That's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it will vary from system to system and country to country, obviously. Here in Aotearoa, we have pasture-based systems. So all of our cows are outside. I know in some countries, you know, they have cows inside, you know, in the factory farm systems. They're on concrete with automated feeding systems and things like that. Here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, all of our cows are on pasture, on grass systems. And it looks very idyllic, looks very romantic. But because they're out on pasture-based systems, they're out in the natural world, it's a lot more difficult to capture that effluent that we're talking about. You know, I'm not advocating for cows in sheds, but when a cow is in a housed situation, you can capture a lot of that effluent and you can do things with it, whether it's turn it into fertilizer, rah. Here in Aotearoa, all of our cows are out on pasture. And so all of that waste, you know, 14 times the waste of one human being, that waste is being spread into our waterways, into our aquifers, into, you know, for some places, they have drinking water systems that this waste is seeping into, is leaking into. And so, yeah, they have an incredibly huge footprint. And because here in Aotearoa, our cows are out on the grass, we see a lot more of it expressing itself in a lot of our waterways. Around 80% of our waterways in areas where there are dairy cows are too polluted to swim in or to drink from, or to have as a recreational source of a way to connect with the natural world, which is a huge thing for me. Because growing up as a kid, I had my awa, my river, Mangatawa, right next to my house, and I could go down there anytime I wanted to have that kind of beautiful relationship with nature, to connect with the environment. But nowadays, a lot of parents are unable to take their children. You know, I'm not a parent myself, but the idea that in the near future, my future children may not be able to have that same experience that I was able to have as a child is a really scary idea. This thought that we're starting to lose our natural sources of recreation and spiritual enrichment with the environment is a huge concern. You know, where are our environmental advocates going to come from if they're not able to get out into the natural world and enjoy it? So yeah, cows produce a hell of a lot of waste. It's a huge issue, and it makes me incredibly sad.
Well, you said they didn't increase the size of the land, but they kept increasing the size of the herd.
Exactly. So that's one of the problems here is, well, it's everywhere, intensification. I'm not advocating animal agriculture, but the fact that we're not able to spread the cows out any further is a huge issue. Instead of spreading the cows out over more space, we're intensifying it, which really focuses that amount of effluent that's there. We intensify it into a small space, and then the areas where that waste runs off is incredibly concentrated to the point where the natural environment isn't able to disperse or use those nutrients as they normally would in a more natural system. And so, yeah, intensification is a huge issue. And of course, for the animals themselves, the fact that they have these intensive systems, everyone knows about this argument regarding factory farms. When you have that intensive system where animals are too close to each other and they're not able to express their normal behaviors in a more natural kind of herd, there are the huge issues for the animals as well. So, you know, it's an environmental catastrophe, and as well for the animals, an animal rights catastrophe as well.
You said 150 million liters of urine per day. Is that just your cows in New Zealand or all the cows?
That is cows in Aotearoa in New Zealand. So, you know, the film is a very New Zealand centric film. A lot of the figures in the film is about Aotearoa, New Zealand, which might be confusing for some people, but really what we've been trying to do is tell the story of the dairy industry of this country. Globally, it's replicated, but the numbers will vary a lot. But what we've tried to do is to paint the picture for our country, and then for people to kind of take our example and look at how it would apply to their own country. The story will be very much the same for a lot of people, but because we have such intensified systems, I mean, we have more dairy cows than we do have human beings in this country. You know, we have more dairy cows than we have human beings here in Aotearoa, and that's not including the beef cattle or the sheep, the goats. I'm just talking about dairy cows. So yeah, a lot of the figures are Aotearoa centric, but more or less the story is going to be pretty much the same for other countries in terms of the environmental harm that's been caused.
Well, if they're producing 150 million liters of urine, I wonder how much poop they're doing every day. And where's that poop going? In your water, right?
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Oh my God.
And you know, like I said before, in terms of how we have a very extractive economy here, you know, we've cleared a lot of our forests. We've cleared a lot of our wetlands. The wetlands, you know, operate as that buffer system. Before water gets into streams and whatnot, it usually passes through wetlands. We've cleared a lot of those wetlands to create more pasture for more cows. And so not only have we lost our forests, we've lost our wetlands, but we've put all of these animals on top of them without the natural filtration systems. And so, you know, all that waste is going into our rivers, into our aquifers, and then it flows out into our oceans as well. And we see that expressed by pollution along our beaches as well.
You know, I always wondered, Chris, because I've seen this in other movies like Cowspiracy, but when you were talking to Fonterra, how are you able to tape those interviews? Like, do you know what I mean? Is that allowed? Because it's hilarious. And when you finally got that lady, and she didn't want to comment on anything you asked her.
Yeah. So the legality of it is you can't record or film someone else's conversation. If there were two people having a conversation and they weren't aware that I was recording it, then that would be illegal. But if there is one individual, one party within the conversation who is aware that they are being recorded, then it's completely kosher. It's completely sound. In several of the interviews on the phone, we didn't do this for every single one because some of them were very on the fly, but for the ones that we had the camera set up, I said to the individual as well, I said, hey, just so you know, you're also we're recording right now. And so we made sure that we were completely kosher. But like I say, if there's one individual who is aware of the conversation being filmed, then it's
Yeah.
okay.
I just thanks. I just always wondered about that. So you in the movie you said we started drinking milk about 10,000 years ago. Why? And why cows? I mean, why not monkeys or sheep or rabbits or I mean, what idiot had this idea?
Yeah, I mean, during our research, we found some evidence of milk consumption dating even further back. But this was a more conservative, more concrete year, the 10,000 figure. Yeah, I mean, during our early years, our ancestors, they're pretty clever, I think, in terms of getting something out of anything. And I'm sure at the time it was a great idea being creative like that and getting nutrients from a different source. I mean, I'm sure in terms of eating animals and killing animals, there was probably a time where it saved many lives in terms of that being a source of nutrition for us. But obviously, we live in different times now. We have other foods available to us, and we have sound evidence to tell us that continuing on this trajectory of viewing animals as resources for us to use for our own good is leading to some incredibly deleterious impacts such as climate change, freshwater degradation, the pollution of our soil, just inefficient land use practices in times of potential famine and world hunger. It's clear that we need to be using our land in more sustainable, efficient ways to benefit more people. So yeah, I think back in the day, I can understand why people ate animals and why people started drinking milk, but there's really no need for it now.
Absolutely. You mentioned that the dairy farmers are running the enforcement agency. That doesn't sound very good.
Yeah, I think this is similar in most countries. I mean, so we have the Ministry for Primary Industries. Ministry for Primary Industries, they are responsible for, say, marketing our products. They're responsible for marketing our primary exports. But at the same time, they are responsible for welfare officers. They are responsible for, in many cases, environmental enforcement. In terms of councils, regional, local councils, they're responsible for environmental enforcement. And what we find consistently, especially in rural areas, is that board members of councils, the environmental protection agencies, they're filled with dairy farmers or people who have vested interests in agricultural sectors. And it's the same for Ministry for Primary Industries, the government group. It's their job to market our products, but it's also their job to enforce animal welfare concerns. And so obviously, I mean, you don't have to be a genius to figure it out that there's a conflict there. There's definitely a conflict of interest there. You're looking after the animals, but you're also creating the rules to exploit them. So yeah, there's something we're trying to highlight in the film, and it's definitely something we're going to be campaigning on in the future to create that separation, to create an independent committee there who can enforce animal welfare and keep the marketing of our primary exports separate, and within our local councils, our local and regional councils, to as well have some, well, just some more screening, I guess, and some more genuine honesty in terms of who can be those local gatekeepers and make sure that they don't have that vested interest themselves, so that we can start protecting the environment for the benefit of the people rather than industrial interests.
That's great. You mentioned over 150 dairy farmers took their lives. Why?
Yeah, very sensitive topic. As I'm sure everyone can understand, suicide. Everyone knows someone who's been affected by suicide. Everyone knows someone who has mental health issues that they're trying to work through, and yeah, it's a very sensitive topic. We decided to include it because it's a very real thing here in New Zealand. People in the rural sector taking their lives. And for me, this is just another thing that shows how this industry is failing. It's failing its own workers. They're not able to provide workers with stability, security. It's a very volatile market, being reliant on international exports. And so, the up and down nature of how much a farmer is going to be paid is reliant on this volatile market. Dairy farming, living rural, can be very isolating. The work is incredibly hard. And the things that you have to do, I would say, and what people will learn in the film is that a lot of our farmers who have to take the lives of these animals themselves, that is a very traumatic, emotional experience that we're forcing them to go through when we further encourage and perpetuate this industry. The farmers having to separate the calves from their mothers. Many of them will tell you that this can be a very difficult experience for them. Normally, animals are sent off to the slaughterhouse just in a truck. The farmer can just leave that to the slaughterhouse. They don't have to worry about that. But in many cases here in Aotearoa, we're finding that farmers are having to do the killing themselves, particularly of bobby calves. And that can play a huge emotional toll as well. In terms of suicide, the last time I checked, the agricultural sector is the second highest, has the second highest rate of suicide. And so there are some dots that need to be joined here. Holistically speaking, the industry is failing on so many levels. For me, it makes immediate sense that this is piling on stress and pressure on these individuals, for some of them to the point where they would be taking their own lives. And so we need to start connecting the dots. We need to start finding solutions that are beneficial for everybody, because this industry is just clearly failing absolutely everyone.
That's absolutely tragic. One thing I thought, though, was inspiring in the film was the interview with the fourth generation dairy farmer that wanted to get out of the business. It kind of reminded me of Howard Lyman, who was a fourth generation cattle rancher that got out of the business.
All right. Yes. Yeah. We were lucky to have a few individuals that we were able to follow in terms of their mission to transition out of the industry. Yeah, I mean, the writing is on the wall for many individuals. And I would say it's those who are more generationally embedded in these systems, who are probably aware of the need to transition away from it. Some of them are very stubborn and entrenched, but I like to think that the smart ones, they've been keeping an eye on things for a while now. They see the writing is on the wall and that it's time to transition. But many dairy farmers have a crippling amount of debt that they have to deal with. And this links back to the suicide issue that we were talking about before, and mental health issues. There is an incredible amount of debt that many of our farmers have taken on through what they have, through the intensification that we talked about earlier as well. They have been encouraged, and this is why I talk about lack of leadership from industry managers and from the government as well. We've been encouraging our dairy farmers to further intensify, borrow more money, upscale your production, keep producing more. And so it's not easy for our dairy farmers to transition. They can't just click. And so although we followed a few incredible individuals who have been trying to transition their systems, they've been met with barrier after barrier and lack of support. And so one of the take action steps that we're encouraging people to do, we have a petition. We have several petitions, but there are petitions on our website. Once people watch the film, or even now, go and have a look at the petitions. One of them is for us to campaign to have transition avenues for our dairy farmers, because one thing I've learned is that they need help to transition. It's not something they can do on their own. They're lacking that industry leadership. And so it's going to take some public push to provide some government funding to come up with some alternatives for these people, because they're not going to be able to do it by themselves.
Thank you. Layla says, is the milk industry subsidized by the government in your country?
Good question. I would say no. Yeah, there are no immediate subsidies. And I think this is something the industry will proudly say. They'll say, no, there's no subsidies, but they get away with a lot of things. For example, water is essentially free in many cases. There's no tax on taking water. So water is, a very precious commodity. And this is the same for water bottling companies. Water bottling companies take this water and then sell it, make a pretty profit, and they don't have to pay any tax on it. The same is for irrigation systems on dairy. If you're a dairy farmer and you need to irrigate, that's all of them, to be quite honest. You're going to be taking huge amounts of water, and there's no water tax. And then further, the greenhouse gas emissions that are created by the dairy industry, there's no tax on emissions. And so where some places might have a subsidy to help them offset, there's just no charge for the emissions. Currently, government is trying to formulate a system to work agricultural emissions and provide a tax, but no subsidies. But the dairy industry gets away with so many things that are passed on to the public taxpayer. So no immediate subsidies, but they get all of these freebies. They get bailouts, as a matter of fact. There are places where, say like where we really love our tourism sector and we have like this really beautiful lake that our tourists like to come to. The government has provided bailouts for those farmers to stop farming because we want to keep the lake pretty for tourists, of course. So there are a lot of instances where the government gives them money, but there are no immediate subsidies.
Wow. I got to tell you, one of my favorite parts of the film, you have my favorite activist in it, Jane Goodall. I mean, how'd you get her? That I've been trying to reach her for years. That is incredible.
I bet. Yeah. Well, I have to give that one over to our director, Amy Taylor. She was working on a project and she was just happy, luckily enough, able to bump shoulders with Jane. I believe she was a camera operator for one of Jane's projects, and yeah, Amy just kind of slipped in her ear. She's working on a dairy documentary, and if she could get a quick interview. And yes, so I haven't been lucky enough to meet the incredible Jane Goodall, but we're so incredibly lucky and privileged to have her on our project. And since she's signed on with us, I've been learning more about her work in terms of the conservation space, and she's recently gone vegan as well. And just
isn't that I know I've been trying to get her. I mean, because I'm going to be approaching my 1000th episode soon, and I'm like, oh my god, I know somebody that knows her. I had him on the show. Richard Wrangham used to work for her, but he couldn't really give me her email. He gave me like a general email, but I just think that's amazing to see her in the film.
She's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Chris, why do you think the demand for dairy globally is rising? Is it because it's just so addictive and people, I mean, it's going up and up.
I mean, I just say it's propaganda. It's marketing. We've got rich capitalists that are embedded in the system and want to milk it dry for every dollar that they can. We have the infrastructure, the marketing avenues, the business relationships, the fast food outlets who are just they're designed to pump out this product, and we have the systems in place to produce the product. I mean, if you took an individual in an isolated system, they're not just going to magically say, oh my God, I want milk, I want cheese, oh my God. They're getting the marketing of this product. The industries that market these products are incredibly savvy. They've got more money than me, all of us put together. And so they will continue to market this product until it becomes too expensive for them. And that's when I believe they're going to move on to lab-based milk and those other things. I think that's just a matter of time. But yeah, the demand is not a natural demand. It is a manufactured demand. And yeah, I'd say it's a manufactured demand.
Thank you. Here's a great question from Bryant, who's watching live. Do the animal farmers have programs available to help them transition to some kind of plant-based farming?
They do not. And that's one of the things we're advocating for on our Take Action page. We're trying to get enough signatures to convince the government that this is an avenue that we should be providing for our farmers. Provide them with funding to experiment, because farmers are only going to see transitioning as a viable route, if they have a blueprint, if they have local examples. They're not just going to do it because we're all saying it's a good thing to do. They need, they're farmers, hearty, salt of the earth individuals, they need to see other farmers doing it. And first, for us to see other farmers doing it, we need to give them the capacity, the ability to actually do it. So, no, unfortunately, I mean, I've seen some small scale ones, very, very small scale ones. People are probably going to send me examples. Chris, you lied. But there are some very, very, very small scale ones, but we need to see it rolled out nationally, and we need to see it pushed into the consciousness of more individuals so that we can start advocating for more of it. Because we just don't have enough of it.
One of the things I think is so telling and ludicrous was how the dairy industry tried to sue all the plant-based milk. So they're saying that you can't call it milk. Remember that?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? They're just trying to hamstring us, I would say. I mean, there's no consumer going out there accidentally buying almond milk or soy milk. It's just ridiculous. And I've heard some people from, they actually argue about this. The industry themselves, I attend all their meetings and stuff to see what they're saying, and their leadership themselves are saying that this is a fight that we shouldn't bother with. The consumers aren't confused. In fact, the consumers want healthier products. That's why they're buying them. It's not about a labeling issue. And so I think they're trying to hamstring us just to make it a little bit harder for vegan businesses. But I don't think they're going to make any good gains on that one.
Yeah, it's like that guy from Chick-fil-A suing a guy had a t-shirt that said eat more kale, and the Chick-fil-A guy sued him because his slogan was eat more chicken. And we all know that most of us can't tell the difference between chicken and kale.
Crazy. Yeah, I mean, they'll try anything, they'll try anything. They're clutching at straws, and they're just going to try everything that they can because they can see that the writing's on the walls. So, I don't blame them for trying, but the consumers want healthier, more ethical, sustainable products, and that's just how it is.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Susan's wondering if the rancher advocacy program could help some of these farmers transition.
Rancher advocacy program. It's not one that I've heard of. I'm assuming it's maybe like an American or Canadian group. It's not one that I've heard of. The rancher advocacy, I will look into them because there are, anyone who's out there who's wanting to maybe give us some examples or any advice. I know that there are similar initiatives going on around the globe at the moment. We're all collectively working on this together. And so if there are any groups out there, or if people have suggestions for us in terms of groups to contact, please do so, because we're a collaborative project. And this is a big beast that we're tackling. We need as much help as we can get.
Wow, thank you. You mentioned in the film there's an increased use of synthetic fertilizer. Why is that, and what is the impact of that?
Synthetic fertilizer. Yeah. What's the impact of it? Well, it's an external input on the land. If people understand regenerative agriculture or any natural system, if you put something in, you get something out. And so we're putting in this synthetic external fertilizer, and what we're getting out is more grass for the cows to eat. But along that system, there are a lot of byproducts. Only a certain amount of that fertilizer is being taken up by the grass. The vast majority of it is the pollution that we see in our waterways. A lot of the issues that we have in our waterways is excess plant or algal growth in our water, and that throws off the natural ecology of our water systems. Furthermore, putting in that additional external input on the land means you can further intensify the farming system. So we have all of this synthetic nitrogen fertilizer coming in. A lot of it is flowing into our waterways, and it's allowing farmers to put more cows. The more cows means the more waste, the more urine, which also doubly flows into our systems and creates even more pollution. And so that's another thing that we're advocating for. You can go to our Take Action page to learn a bit more and sign some more petitions around banning synthetic nitrogen fertilizer. It's just another avenue that we can potentially take to create some difference in the system. Without the fertilizer, we're not able to have that intensified system. So hopefully that's something we can get rid of.
In New Zealand, do they still use mass doses of hormones and antibiotics like they do in our country for dairy cows?
Yeah, well, definitely antibiotics. A lot of antibiotics. I don't know specifically about hormone injections, but we do have a lot of supplemented feed, which would have a lot of, like the B12, the supplemented feed, lots of different types of supplementation that goes into our animals. Antibiotics is a huge thing. Again, with intensified systems, we have a lot of, mastitis, which is, of course, inflammation of the udder. You know, these cows, they're having a baby every year. So they're having to be milked pretty much nonstop every year. I think there's just a 1 month drying off period for dairy cows. But other than that, their poor udders are being used pretty much the whole year. And so that causes a lot of opportunities for harm, damage of the udder, which creates the mastitis, which means a lot of our cows are having to be given a lot of routine antibiotics. But yeah, it's just another layer of terrible things that goes on in this industry.
Yeah, well, I hope like one day, you know, our great grandchildren will look back and say, this was the craziest thing. Can you believe people used to do this?
Yeah. Hopefully I see that. Hopefully I see that as well. I can't wait. Yeah.
Well, you know, I think the best way to end this interview, and I could keep talking to you, and you're welcome to come on again closer, or if Amy can get internet.
Oh, thank you so much.
My pleasure. I'm going to end with the trailer for the movie, but is there anything else you want to say to the audience other than to please watch the film and support it in any way they can?
Oh, yeah. Well, just a huge thank you to everyone who has supported us on our crowdfund, especially everyone who's sharing our content, everyone who's left lovely comments and messages, and just all the support that we've been seeing from people that are following this journey. Ngā mihi nunui. Kia koutou katoa, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Thank you all so much. Yeah, we're just blown away by the support, and we love this community, the animal rights, vegan community. This is our community, and this is our film. And so just thank you again. And thank you so much, Chef AJ, for having me on.
It is my pleasure. Good luck with the film, and I will do my best to tell everybody about it. And I would like to now play the trailer. I am not the best with screen share, but I think I figured it out. Let's see. I think I got it to work.
Dairy was a normal part of life growing up in New Zealand. I started the day with milk on my Weet-Bix and never thought twice about it. So it's been a journey coming to understand that milk isn't the wholesome product we're led to believe it is.
Beneficial, not required, associated with lots of diseases. New Zealand's like your beautiful friend that's just not cancer.
I didn't know any of this.
People are dying, and it's all for the sake of making money.
This industry is not working for anyone.
We've gone down industrial agriculture big time, and we've got industrial-sized emissions.
Not angry at the farmers, but the system that they're caught up in is totally flawed.
And looking back, it's like, wow, we were duped.
You guys are going up against the biggest industry in the entire country.
I never considered that my life could be threatened by exposing this industry.
Oh, that's when it really, truly hits you what's going on.
Industrial dairying is this country's biggest polluter.
They are the most inefficient food production system on the planet.
There must be an alternative. We need a whole new way of thinking.
Do you think we're putting our future food security at risk?
No.
It's incredibly powerful and it's incredibly devious. 5 million cows are a lot more important than 5 million people.
Water is going to be the next gold. And if we don't look after the water, then all of us will perish.
Dairy industry are just shuffling the chairs on the Titanic. We need a new boat.
If you consider we're on this little ball, this little beautiful planet of ours, we have a choice as to what sort of impact we're going to make.
Such an incredibly powerful film. Everyone, please see it. And for those that are sensitive, you actually saw the worst in the trailer, those 2 seconds. Thank you so much.
Tie the knot.
Whoops.
Lose your health coverage when
Oh
you
my
get let
God.
go.
I better go because it's going crazy. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much, Chef AJ.
Thanks so much. Take care.